Asimov's Caves of Steel. Remember this, it will come up later. Ellison and Bova thought the idea had legs and decided to adapt it into a TV show. They pitched the idea to a few companies, including NBC, where an executive named Terry Keegan said no. They later showed Brillo to Paramount, where the head of development, Terry Keegan, he'd recently been hired there, said no. The same man passed on the same pitch twice at two companies. Clearly not a fan of the robot cop idea. 6 months later, Terry Keegan sold a show called Future Cop to ABC. It's a show about a robot cop.
He's an android, a robot, the perfect cop.
Our boys realize they've been ripped off.
When I saw it, I wanted to file immediately. My attorney said, forget it, man. It's 90% of all plagiarism suits the plaintiff loses. Besides, these guys will kill you. You'll never work in this town again.
They spend years finding a lawyer willing to sue a giant television conglomerate, despite the cost and the possibility of being blacklisted from working in television. In his deposition, Keegan claims he never read Brillo, an obvious lie. It was later discovered the memos proving he deliberately ripped them off had been burned. The jury found in favor of Ellison and Bova and awarded them $337,000 in damages, about $1.2 million today. Ellison used some of the money to put up a billboard across the street from the studio reading, "Writers, don't let them steal from you. Keep their hands out of your pockets." Or at least he said he was going to in interviews at the time, and later journalism claims it happened, but I can't find any pictures, which is a shame. Either way, they still made off with all that delicious money. Yum yum.
I've been waiting 4 years for this moment. 4 years to tell other writers they can fight them and beat them.
So, what's all that about? Okay, you know that trick video essayists use where they open on a semi-related example that sets the stage for the wider topic? It's a classic, I do it all the time. I wanted to open on a recent example of a writer winning a plagiarism lawsuit and getting their day in court. But there isn't one. This ancient case, which took place over a decade before I, and statistically you, were even born, is still the best, most recent, and almost only example. Ellison and Bova are among the few writers to ever see financial compensation for their work being stolen. Oh, this is... Testing, 1, 2, 3. For the foreseeable future, if someone else on here steals your work for money, there's not much you can do except talk about it. A few years ago, I made a video with some examples of plagiarism, and even covered a time I felt it happened to me. The guy in question, Lukey Poo, briefly posted a 10-minute response accusing me of overreacting, before appearing to think better of the whole thing and deleting this, along with the video copying me.
I watched your video, went through it piece by piece, and copied it, because you're such an incredible YouTuber.
Thanks, Luke. Apology accepted. He has since rebranded his channel, recognizing the irony in presenting himself as a literal piece of shit, but his videos are still awash with plagiarism accusations, ripping off other YouTubers for hours at a time now, the only new sections being stuff about how homophobia is fine. Maybe the rebrand was a little too soon, but no authority took Luke's video down. He could have left it up, and people often do. You can spend ages on a unique video with an original idea, and a way more popular guy can rip it off, along with its thumbnail, get a bajillion views, and rake in the cash. On YouTube, if you have an original idea, if it's good, it won't be yours for long. The fact I'm making this video during one of the biggest creative strikes in history isn't lost on me. Other people's hands have never before been this deep in the pockets of creators. We need Harlan Ellison's billboard now more than ever. But I don't know how to rent a billboard, and it sounds expensive. So instead, we're going to talk about plagiarism on YouTube. What exactly it is, why it's wrong, and the many unintended side effects. Only then can we begin to talk about what to do about it, or at least what I'm going to do to try to put some of it right. I'm going to use a few relatively well-known examples you might have heard of already, and some new ones I found just for this video. I could even ruin some of your favorite YouTubers for you. Apologies in advance. So, let's start some fights. Part I. Philip.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for clicking on the video.
Philip Mewson was a YouTuber who reviewed Nintendo Switch games and accessories and talked about Nintendo-related news. His videos were surprisingly well edited, and by that I mean they used way too many fancy transitions. I mean, they're not even hard to do, you just drag and drop them on your timeline and what? But when he applied for a job at IGN, his obvious mastery of a plugin everyone else also has, and existing channel with a decent size led to him getting picked as their new Nintendo editor. On August 6th, 2018, his review of Dead Cells went up onto the official official IGN YouTube channel. But then on August 7th, YouTuber Boomstick Gaming posted a video titled, "IGN copied my Dead Cells review. What do I do?" He had noticed some similarities between Philip's reviews and his own, published in late July.
Dead Cells takes the progression of a Metroidvania and integrates it into this procedurally generated action roguelite.
It takes the progression system of a Metroidvania and transforms it into a procedurally generated action roguelite.
This combat system is fast, fluid, responsive, and one of the most rewarding representations of 2D combat of the entire genre.
Fights are fast, fluid, responsive, and hands down one of the most gratifying representations of video game combat I've ever experienced.
Dead Cells figures out an intriguing way to have your roguelite and Metroidvania experience all in one by focusing on your failures and urging you to try something new the next time.
Dead Cells strikes a perfect and engaging balance between the Metroidvania and roguelite experiences by focusing on your failures and urging you to experiment each time you do fail.
Dead Cells only falters slightly with some repetition setting in, especially on the early areas and during longer play sessions.
Dead Cells does falter slightly with some repetition, but it's only felt in its earlier areas and during the extended play sessions.
Speaking of repetition, oh my god. The review was taken down while IGN investigated the issue further, and then later that day confirmed he had been let go from the company. But was this the first time Philip had done this? Catching someone doing plagiarism is difficult. Someone has to notice the theft, which means having also seen the copied work. And if it's anything obscure, that's quite unlikely. If you catch someone plagiarizing once, chances are they rolled those dice a few times before and hadn't been unlucky yet. People started looking through his other reviews in case there was more. Over at Kotaku, Jason Schreier's article on the firing was updated to mention an anonymous tip, pointing out similarities between Philip's review of FIFA 18 on the Switch and the one on Nintendo Life by Chris Scullion. Philip's review was made for his personal channel before he was even hired at IGN, meaning he'd been doing this for a while. Scullion himself would later post a video comparing his review with Philip's, showing off the many similarities, and I'll link that in the description. But I want to zoom in on my favorite example. Philip tries to hide what he's doing by changing words around, and he does it really badly. In his article, Chris says compared to the non-Switch versions, the graphics are a good deal less detailed. Here's Philip's version.
However, when you get up close and get a good look at some of the character models, it's pretty clear that they do have a good amount of less detail than the Xbox One and PS4 versions of the game do.
It's pretty clear that they do have a good amount of less detail. No one would ever write that sentence on purpose. You only create that by trying to change something you stole. There's a great example here of the deeper problems that plagiarism can cause. Philip's review contains false information. For example, here when he talks about the game's Women's League feature.
FIFA 18 comes with the standard tournament and kickoff modes, as well as the Women's League, which was officially introduced in FIFA 16.
There are no women's leagues in FIFA 18. There's women's football, but leagues are specific real-life organizations that do not exist in the game. Philip's plagiarism avoidance techniques caused him to reword a sentence so badly that he invented a feature that doesn't exist. While these discoveries were being made, Philip made the decision to record and post an infamous, quickly deleted video onto his channel entitled My Response. Not an apology, a response. Philip denied everything, took no responsibility, and told numerous lies in this video. At the time, this was criticized heavily by everyone for obvious reasons, but looking back on it while trying to understand this kind of behavior, it's actually really useful. This is worth looking at in a discussion of plagiarism because by being so poorly thought out, it's actually a valuable insight into how people react when they're caught and the different ways they try to cover their ass. When someone more competent than Philip uses these techniques in a subtler way, we can recognize them for what they are. Thanks, Philip.
There were a lot of circumstances surrounding it, but at the end of the day, I was the editorial lead on it, so if anything, that makes it my responsibility.
He claims there was a complicated process to making the review with lots of circumstances. The point is to make you wonder what really happened, so you forget what happened. Another way of doing this is to be passive about the events.